Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. So am I pronouncing your name right? Elissa Hecker, correct?
Yes, you are correct. Yes.
What does the
It
D
is
stand
It is
for?
Melissa without the M is the easiest way to remember it.
And the D,
The D is just it's part of my brand.
part of it, yeah. Okay, that's the first time I heard that. I was like thinking, okay, you're going to say like Dominique or something.
Deborah. It's not
Deborah,
that interesting.
Deborah. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Uh, far off. I was far from that. Elisa, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and reaching out to the podcast. It's a pleasure
Yeah.
to have you here.
Thank you.
The main reason why is because I always am looking for attorneys to come onto the podcast, especially attorneys who specialize. Now, I know you have several components to your career and your practice, but you specialize in entertainment law. And I need more of that, on the podcast for independent creators that are out there. The last time I had an attorney on the show was late last year, Lillian
Mhm,
Taylor. So she specialized in trademarks and IP. So there
mhm.
was a lot of value, she also brought, to the show, besides also talking, about her career. And we both know how critically important it is for creatives, whether you're a musician, whether you're an author, to have a good, solid legal foundation for your career.
Absolutely.
For me, it's like the starting point. As a consultant for independent creators, it's like the most critical part in building their brand, in building
Yeah.
their business correctly. Before we jump into studio and do all the fun stuff,
Before
let's
you
get
start
to
making the
nail.
money, you have to have your agreements in place. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. So that's why it's so important, to have you come onto the show. Before we get started, I'll share a personal experience with you as well. Why I also, started self-educating myself on entertainment law or just law in general. It was throughout the COVID phase, 2021. And at the time, I wasn't feeling well. I didn't know whether it was COVID or not, but I was in bed. I wasn't well. I was taking medication. And when you're taking medication, you get more anxious all the time and you're feeling more depressed. And for the first time ever, I got this notification from one of the biggest IP law firms in Africa.
Mhm.
So when we open up this letter, I'm like, what's this about now? So the client they were representing at the time was saying that I infringed on their name
Oh.
because at the time
Mhm,
before COVID, I also got an events company, so we do
mhm,
private events such as your weddings and so on, and also nightlife events. And it's called PMG Events,
mhm.
Posh My Gosh Events, abbreviation PMG. So the company they were actually representing was also called PMG, and they were also involved in media. And for the first time in my
Ah,
life, I never knew
yeah.
you could come up with someone because you share the same abbreviation. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? So, of course, the attorney said, we're going to give you, this amount of time to get back to you.
Mhm,
So, luckily at the time, my partner, he was finishing off his law studies, but he doesn't specialize like in IP
mhm,
law. So, because it was the COVID period, we didn't have the funding available to actually
mhm,
go now and get an attorney to represent us. So, we just put our two heads together, to figure this all out and just try to
mhm.
settle the matter in good faith, with this company. And we managed to do that. It took us a year, Elisa. It took us a
Wow.
year of
Wow.
emails up and down. We were proposing this, they were coming back
Mhm.
and proposing this. So the matter never ended up going to court. And I'm so
That's good.
grateful that,
Yep.
we managed to come to a mutual, understanding. Of course, I had to now, because they registered, the abbreviation PMG, which I
Mhm.
never know you could do. Now I know you can.
Now you know.
Right?
That's why it's so important
But
because you have the enforcement mechanism behind you.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, long story short, I decided to also, it was also like a blessing in disguise for me because then I could actually push up my brand as the full name instead of just an
Mhm,
abbreviation, which is working better for me, in this day and age. So,
mhm.
from that moment onwards, I have just been continuously self-educating myself on entertainment law, actually any type of law. And I've learned to realize how important it is. I'm lucky to have mentors and coaches. Like I know, laws change country to country, but when it comes to dealing with your producer contracts and your songwriting contracts and your split sheets, it's basic templates, that at least I have now, that I have on hand to use when it comes to my clients. So that was just a personal experience, and wow, what a journey has been. Like when it comes to law, it never stops. It just never stops. You finish one matter, something else comes up. I just had a client that I consulted with on Friday, actually in Durban. So actually coming to Durban, I managed to get a new client as well for myself.
Nice.
And she's 17 years old. She wants to get her first, single out there. But luckily, she has an elder sister who was the one that actually contacted me, and she was also in the consultation. And she was like, I want to make sure my sister is always protected. And I was like, yes, we are definitely going to make sure. And we do customized offers, for different clients, depending, what's their needs and wants. And when we came to concluding this offer this week, there is 15 different types of contracts that we need to get together for her just to get started. And I mean, 15 is, it's like, wow, big number, but it can be much more than that, depending on, if you're working with a team, especially when it comes to record labels that are consulting. It becomes more, complex.
Everyone's
but anyway,
an independent contractor. You have all of those different voices coming in, and they're all important.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so that's that's my part, on my background, my experience with law. But let's get started with you. Background history, how it all started for you, why law, why entertainment law, why IP. Let's start there. I just want to say something for the listeners before you get started. Sorry, because you're smiling so much. Listeners, attorneys are also human. They do smile as well.
Yes.
I know we're used to seeing attorneys with a straight form face, like,
I actually love being a lawyer. And one of the reasons is because I love my clients. I mean, they are so interesting and creating new things and just every day making the world a better place. So it's great fun for me to be part of the team that helps them be secure. And then they can just go, which is it's tremendous. So to go back to your question, I was as far as I know from birth, I knew I was very interested in the arts. My father was actually one of the first attorneys in the U.S. copyright bar. So I grew up surrounded by actors and actresses and visual artists and the photographers at my party, at my wedding, and things like these were family friends who also happened to be internationally known photographers. And the best shots were not the people we hired, but the guests who were there, underneath the tables or standing, doing all the great pictures. And I always knew that I wanted to somehow be involved in arts and entertainment. And I was a dancer and a choreographer for years up through college. But I also knew that wasn't going to be my vocation. I was good, but I wasn't that good. And it's a very hard life.
Wow.
So I figured also when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, I put the C in the circle on all of my work. And I would say copyright, all rights deserved. In the US, it's all rights reserved. But from the very beginning, I was a copyright nerd. And that is the basic foundation of what we do in entertainment and arts. Like you were saying, the intellectual property, the copyrights, the trademarks, the trade secrets, the meat behind, the creations. So I went to law school, and in law school, I worked for the Authors Guild, which is a representative organization that is on behalf of authors. I worked for museums. I worked at the Harry Fox Agency, which was the agency that represented U.S. music publishers and the National Music Publishers Association. They were one organization then. And then when I graduated, they gave me a position. So I became the second person in the legal department. And for almost 10 years, just really lived a dream. I was able to move right into in-house counsel, an in-house counsel role where you never knew what was going to come across the desk. It was everything having to do with music. It was also having to do with audits and licensing and reviewing the lease for the building, and everything. And it was fascinating. So left that when my first child was born and went out on my own almost 21 years ago. And I've been acting as general counsel to entrepreneurs, businesses, creatives ever since.
And your market, is it just in the US or do you have international clients as well?
It's all across the US. I do have a few clients in other countries, not widely in other countries, but I do have clients elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the reason I'm asking that, is because, when this show does go live, I'm going to share your awesome website. It was so awesome to go onto a website and just see you like there, smiling, all happy, vibrant, all the key information. So, I would love to refer, any independent creator that says, okay, I would love to consult. We live in this day and age where, if you're looking for an attorney to deal with a certain matter for you, you don't have to look for an attorney that's in your country.
Right.
You can also look abroad.
Unless you have a litigation issue, that's very specific, usually to the country or the state laws, depending. But I can definitely help. I can draft. I can also have conversations. So a lot of it is just about what's the negotiation, what's your strategy, what's your tactic, how do you practice? That crosses all borders.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's good to know.
Yeah,
it's good to know. So, when it comes to the entertainment scene and with all the clients you've had over the years. But you made a major jump, from choreography into law. Do you still have a passion for it?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you could see what's behind me, but I've also, for 15 years, I was involved with an organization called Dance NYC, and I was chair of its board for 12 years. I just stepped down at the end of 2024. I'm very involved in the arts and culture scene in and around New York. And, my entertainment clients are all over, like I was saying, all over. So very much have my fingers in as much as I can. It's fun. It's really so much fun. I say I represent folks from spokesmodels, and podcasters and stuff to veterinarians. They all have similar needs. It's just that you have to know the specific industries and, how to be successful in each one.
Yeah. So it's like sort of like, a sideline hobby for you, besides just dealing with law, all the time.
Well, it's part of being a good lawyer and a good general counsel is knowing the industries. I mean, it's like a lot of the stuff I do is transferables. It's contracts, it's negotiations, it's best practices. But what happens in a movie deal or a television deal? What happens when you're dealing in a collaboration agreement? What happens when you're in the studio? Like those are the intricacies that are very important to know. Or have really good people you can turn to. It's I'm fortunate I've been in this industry or in these industries for long enough that I have great referral partners too, or people I just pick up the phone and be like, hey, does this sound right? And we do for each other, which is great because I'm a solopreneur. I don't have a large firm around me. So it's really nice to have, teams of people who I can really trust.
100%. 21 years, I mean, that's a long time. So which do you prefer more? Consultations, and dealing with negotiations, or actually being in court?
Well, I'm not a litigator, so I only do transactional work, and I only do like the face-to-face, the client relationships, that kind of stuff. My goal is to build up the business or the craft, let it be successful, let it be, and draft those agreements that if there's an issue down the line, you refer to the agreement. If you have to go to litigation, what do we do? That kind of thing. But I have a lot of good attorneys to whom I can refer for litigation. I haven't stepped into court probably since I was sworn in. That was
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, and I'm going to tell you why. Because of the experience I had, like I explained at the start of the show in 2021, I have sort of been doing the same thing, but I'm not qualified to do so. Okay, but
well, you are. I mean, it's a smart business practice. You learn from what happened, and you make sure that you carry forward so that your business is successful and you don't infringe on someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because, I set up my agency in the same manner that you are running yours at the moment. And I've been now in two situations where I go with the client to court. I advise the client what to say in court, but of course I
Mhm.
can't enter the court. And
Right.
would you believe it? We actually do come out winning.
I
We do
believe it
come out
because
winning because
a lot of it is
that's the
common
money.
sense. Yeah, a lot of it is common
Exactly.
sense. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's great.
So yeah, that's how the model I built. And one of the reasons why is because, building my own creative career myself, like
Mhm.
I knew how difficult it was. And I knew if you didn't
Mhm.
have the funding,
Yep.
and I mean, litigation, attorney, the fees, I mean, they're extremely high, you
Yeah.
know. And these days, like, I recall 10 years ago, and I'm talking about, a small firm, a family firm, when I
Mhm.
was dealing with, now the father, of course, not because the children have taken over the firm,
Mhm.
so the older generation, they were like quite fair, when it came to fees. Okay, you're going to pay me this, and I'm going to do this for you, and you will come out actually winning. Both of you are smiling. Now, the newer generation of attorneys that are coming into the scene, and I had a fallout with one firm actually,
Oh.
just last year, they're charging you for this, they're charging you for that, they're charging you for that, and then 3-4 weeks down the line, there's still no positive result. But yet you're bullying
They
me.
should not
You
be
know?
promising a guarantee of anything. So you should
Exactly.
absolutely know, and they should be very transparent about what the fees are. You should be able to agree to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's how I actually caught them out, because they weren't transparent.
yeah.
And to be completely brutally honest, they weren't transparent with how much they actually knew about the matter itself.
Yeah, those guys give bad name. Those are the people who the reason why there are bad lawyer jokes. I mean, there are a lot of good lawyers out there who do it
Yeah.
right, who really care, who really listen, who work with your budget.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as in any industry, you have some not such great characters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, 100%. Well, that's why we have people like you,
yeah. Well,
still
thank you.
fighting the good
I try.
fight.
I mean, that's very important. With litigation, you do have to pay a lot of fees up front, and you do have to agree to a lot because the litigators do a tremendous amount of work getting the case ready for
Yeah.
court. Um, with me, it's a very different thing because if I'm working with an individual creative, or I'm representing a production company, or I'm representing a publishing company or an author, or whatever it is, it's a much more personal relationship. It's a lot less, I have to do like gather documents, review a million things. It's more like, tell me about your life. What are you doing? What's your capacity?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? What are your dreams? How do we get
Yeah.
there? It's a very different type of relationship. And it's not the high end charges. It's more like, here's what I'll charge you for legal fees. And we figure out, on an hourly rate or based on the budget. But a lot of it is also, and I'm sure you see this in your business too, a lot of it is not actually therapy, but it's listening, it's counseling, it's being an advisor. And that's not like billable hours. That's just time you spend building the relationship with the client. So it's
100%.
very different being a transactional attorney from being a litigation attorney.
Yeah. I mean, one of the points you
Yeah.
raised when you reached out to be a guest on the podcast was how to make money and build relationships.
Yeah.
And I actually put a line under relationships, when I was doing my notes, because that is so critically important. You have to build a relationship. It's not always just about, okay, here's my fee, this is what you have to pay
Yeah.
me to do ABC. It's about, okay, let's build a long-term relationship
Yeah.
because you
And
know
it's
now.
not just between my client and me. It's between if there's a client who's going to a studio, you have to have the relationships and the trust of everyone around you. You have to have good agreements where you all agree to the terms, where you know what's happening before the work starts is very key, because after the work ends is when the problems happen. And I mean, that, but and then if there are issues, I'm like, blame your lawyer, keep your relationship, say, my lawyer said I have to do this, and this is why it's beneficial to both of us. Like, build those relationships. And I like to help build those for my clients with the people that they need also.
Yeah.
And make money.
Yeah.
They need to make money. It's that's why everybody's doing this.
Yeah. And also be the type of, advisor where you informing your client, okay, when you reach this level, because
Yeah.
this is, what your current objective is, also to inform them that with that success is going to come this problem, that problem, that
Mhm.
problem afterwards. So let's try to also make sure that we secured when that
Yes.
does happen.
Yes. That's why we draft contracts a certain way. And it's also, it's just really getting to know the why behind what they're doing. because sometimes people go in and they just want to do something, or they get an agreement. They're like, I just want to sign it. But what do you really want? What don't you want? Which very often is just as important of what you do want. What's your long-term plan? Like there's a lot of differences. You can have 4 different people doing the same thing, and there's a different why behind all of them. So my job is to create a problem solve, how to get them to their why. And it may be a different approach for all of them, depending on what they want.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love this. I love your strategy. I love who you are as a human, as a human.
Thank you. The feeling's mutual. I feel like we do the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one thing I love, about, just having that spiritual connection with the universe, because, you end up interacting with people who are on the same frequency as you, which is great, which is great. So when it comes to the entertainment scene, in your experience, let's just put it down to the last 5 years. What's the common issues that you have noticed for yourself that's happening in the space?
The biggest one is AI. Forget about the last 5 years, the last couple of years, which is both tremendously incredible and exciting, and tremendously scary and threatening, depending on who you're talking to and what's happening. Because so much of AI is based on taking other people's creativity and making it into something new without authorization, without payment, without anything. And that's what it does. And some of it is being able to generate these great ideas that you can then bounce from, or things you can create from, and that is tremendous. So a lot of the way I've drafted contracts has now changed, and language has been put in about AI, because in the United States, you can't really protect anything created in copyright if it's created like a generative AI program, for example. If it's like write a story in the form of blah, blah, blah with blah, 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 and blah, 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 you cannot protect. So if you're going to write a song using AI through prompts and someone else copies your song, you don't have the right to go after them for it, because under copyright law in the US, it's not yours. So it's different in different countries at this point, but that is something that, we're following on a day-to-day basis as to the advancements, regulations, laws, court cases, and it's really cool to watch. So, and depending on who you talk to, it's, like I said, very scary or very exciting, or a little bit of both. Yeah, that's, I would say, the biggest. And then I'm not sure about any particular issues. It's the business of entertainment. So it's very similar in terms of how you draft a contract or how you negotiate across all of the entertainment industries, because you want to have basic things in there. What are you doing? What's the term of the agreement? What happens if nobody gets, if you don't pay? There's confidentiality stuff. There's non-compete stuff. There's non-disparagement stuff. There are limited licenses. There are buyouts. There's all of these kinds of things are in your agreements. So those are pretty standard. Those really don't change, which is what's so nice, because you have continuity throughout, business dealings.
It's sort of like your norm agreements, at the starting phase of it. Is there any agreement that you've, dealt with that's not within the norm?
Oh God, all the time. And then I have to rewrite them. Very often people, depending on the folks with whom I'm working, if I get an agreement in that someone said, hey, so-and-so wants me to sign this, can you look it over? Usually the bad agreements are people who didn't hire attorneys and they've cut and pasted from the internet, different things, or they've gone onto ChatGPT, or they've used a service. I don't want to mention the names of the services, but it's like they charge their lawyers $20 an hour. They're not specific to the business or the client, and they're just generic, but they don't work. So those are ones where I really have to sit back with a client and say, I don't want you to sign this, and this is why. And let me write the agreement for you, so you understand, not only for you to have this agreement, but to know what to look for in future agreements. When you have them, you don't want this, you don't want that, you want to make sure this is in it, that kind of thing. You do it your own kind of, I don't want to spend money on a lawyer agreements are usually the ones that require the most work.
And working with say one solopreneur, for example, let's just say you're working with one artist versus working with the team. That can become
Yeah.
more complex, because now you also need agreement between all those team members,
Oh, absolutely.
that's involved in a certain project,
Absolutely. And sometimes those team members are all members of the same company that I'm creating. And it's what do
Yeah,
they all want out of it? What are they all putting into it? We need to define it really well up front so that everybody knows what the obligations are, what the contributions are, who may be getting back afterwards, what the percentages are, especially in a creative team. Like if you're opening a production company, you need to know how the company is going to run. And that's a very important
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. Also with with family, and I'm referencing
That could be
sorry,
great or bad. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
I'm going to reference it back to the same consultation that I had last Friday.
Mm-hmm.
As I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's a 17-year-old artist. She's a
Yep.
vocalist. Her sister was represented to her, and then we were talking about non-disclosure agreements.
Mm-hmm.
So I threw it out there because you paid me to be honest with you,
Yep.
and I asked, you two are sisters. Is there an agreement between the both of you? And then the two looks at each other.
And they giggle.
Like, okay, we weren't expecting that. I'm like, there needs to be an agreement between the two of you as well, because you are currently managing her career
Right.
at the moment.
Right.
The point of contact is you. I'm dealing with you. Down the line, let's just say she releases a first single and it blows up. What are you entitled to?
Right.
you
Right.
Maybe you don't have that expectation that it'll blow up to 2 million streams, for example, hypothetically speaking. But what if it does?
Right. Well,
And I
that's what
mean,
I'm saying. When the money happens is when the problems happen. But it also
exactly.
depends. Like, I'm not sure about in South Africa, but here a minor can't sign a contract. So if you have a 15-year-old, a parent or guardian has to, or even the 17-year-old, a parent or guardian has to sign on the minor's behalf. If the minor signs it, the minor can disaffirm the contract, meaning can just walk away with no repercussions at all. So it really depends. That's where it depends, I think, country by country law, as into even if there was a non-disclosure agreement, both of them are minors. So in the US, that wouldn't be a legally valid and enforceable agreement.
Yeah, that's a valid point you raised. So
Yeah.
how would you deal with something like that, in the event that two siblings have signed an agreement between each other? One now, let's just say, is 25 years old, one is 17 years old, or 15, 14. And, the career for the minor actually blows up. But
Mm-hmm.
then, and we've witnessed this, with global stars as well,
Yeah.
within a family, they are taking it all,
Yep.
and the minor is just now being psychologically abused, and then
Well, I
you
mean,
have
that's
to
a
say,
whole lot of
yeah,
other things. Yeah, there's a whole lot of other questions. If the minor when the minor should have a guardian or a parent or someone signing on, in this case, her behalf, kind of thing. But when she reaches the age of majority, she should get her own attorney and somehow renegotiate the contracts if she's not happy with them on her own. Like that's a big deal, so that the guardianship doesn't, I mean, it ends when she reaches age of majority. And if she is not happy with the terms and she has enough influence, it also depends on where you are in the market. Like you're saying, if she's huge, if she's like a Taylor Swift or something really big to renegotiate the contracts, that's one thing. But look what happened with Britney Spears. There were a lot of stuff, and then you end up having family court, and you end up sometimes having criminal court involved. And the best way to do it and to try to keep it is that it's a good family unit. It sounds like these two sisters are very bonded. Good guidance like you're giving them is very important to protect them from all of the unsavory characters and the people taking advantage of them. Having the separate bank accounts for them that can't necessarily be touched, holding the money in trust or something like that, so that they actually are protected and that, someone can't come in. I mean, it's happened to the biggest of artists where managers and agents have just wiped them out for,
yeah.
You can only do as much as you can do, but to be as proactive as possible in protecting them, especially because they're kids.
Yeah, no, 100%. Thanks for sharing and bringing a critical point, to the conversation, for more self-knowledge as well. It's so important. It can become extremely complex. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where a creator or anyone, we don't have to limit, the conversation just to the creative space, but where, someone passes away and now the state, takes over, but now there's publishing agreements that were in place or record label deal that was in place, and that can become extremely complex if I use my imagination.
Yes, it's interesting. I've had one client who had a will who had passed away, so the state didn't take it over. So it was much easier to deal with everything, because if you have a will and you have a trust system and you really talk about what your wishes are appropriately, the state can't get to it. That's if you don't have a will, or if you have contracts but not full contracts. I have another client where there was actually a band, and all of the band members have since passed away, and one of the band members' sisters is in charge of the licensing and everything for the band. But there were some band members in the past who had signed agreements with another label, and there was so it's the going through all of the messiness. Who is entitled to what royalty? Who, all of those band members had spouses and children, and it's the messiness of who gets the payments, who's entitled to what, who has legal standing, which means who can claim it in court. And that's something we're talking like boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of papers going back to the 1960s. It's messy. So I highly recommend having those contracts in place, having an organized system, making sure your wills, no matter how young you are, if you're successful, you should have things laid out in your wills. I've seen a lot with choreography. There were very famous choreographers who passed away, and there were battles between who owned the rights to do their work because they had never defined that. And that also can become very messy.
Yeah. No, wills are extremely important, and as a creator, whether you've blown up or not, but if you've put, let's just say, 10 albums or 10 singles out, it's on Spotify, it's going to be there, forever, right? You pass
Hopefully,
away,
yeah.
and when yeah, hopefully.
Depends on the algorithm, but hopefully, yes.
So let's just say this scenario, you self-published, okay? By yourself, it's out there, the tracks are out there. For now, it's not really doing too well. You think, okay, whatever, I'm just going to leave it there and I'm just going to go get a day job. This is not working out. I'm going to give up on myself, right? And then you pass away, okay? And then suddenly something happens, there's this magic spark with your work now, and it's starting to
everybody's sampling it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, now it's generating, millions of dollars, as an example, but you don't have a will. You have children. How do the children claim rights to those compositions?
They have to fight, and they may or may not have the right. It depends on the country. So that's very important to determine, with the copyright laws of the country. B, it depends on whatever agreements were in existence before the person passed away. But if there's no will, that happened with Prince. It was so messy, and it's still being fought over. They're like, he literally had a vault, but he didn't have an updated will. Like it was, it can be awful. It can be awful. And I'm not saying folks have to put everything in the will, but it's, what you want to have done with your creative intellectual property is really important. And your agreements are really important, what they say.
Yeah.
And you can also put in agreements. You want your children to not necessarily get the copyrights, but they're able to get royalties for the rest of their lives, as long as it's me. You have creative ways to benefit other people without them having to own the rights.
And it's also to keep them informed, because, okay, let's just say, I got an agreement, with a publishing company. I decided to use a publishing company to push my works out there. Now I'm getting royalties, because my music is played on radio, it had sync opportunities. It's still there. It's still operating. I passed away, but I never inform, my spouse, my children about it, to anyone close to me about it. The publishing company is going to keep earning, and it's a ruthless industry. So the chance of them actually coming and saying, your mother or your father,
I have money I'm holding for you. That doesn't happen.
Exactly, they're probably going to find, they're going to get some, top class entertainment attorney to come in and say, okay, we need you to actually make this work in our favor,
Yeah.
and all this, attorney's concerned about is he's getting paid, this big check end of the day, and he's going to do
Yeah.
something dodgy, and the family will never ever
Well,
know.
I mean, there are good lawyers. I want to remember there are good lawyers.
Yeah, there are good lawyers. No, there's
Yeah,
definitely good lawyers.
there are dodgy ones. Yes.
Yeah. And definitely if the publishing company is, dishonest, they're not really going to look for the good lawyer. They're going to use the dodgy one to make sure that they keep earning. And we're not going to inform the family that we're actually earning. We're going to route the money, to come in our way.
Right.
There's just so many things that can go wrong.
There are. But it's in any business, transparency, being upfront, being, that's so clear with your intentions and everything is always the best way to go in any business.
Yeah, no, 100% sure. As I said, it's something that will never stop. You think you finish one matter, next thing you know, there's another matter and another matter and
you learn from each one, though, which is important.
Yeah,
I mean,
you do.
Any business owner has that. Always makes mistakes or finds out things. I mean, we don't know everything, and we don't know what we don't know, which is why we hire the right advisors. We hire the agent, we hire the manager, we hire the lawyer, we hire the accountant, we hire our insurance person, because we want to create. That's what I say. I'd like to be able to build the business and legal affair infrastructure for my clients so they can do what they do best. They're not lawyers. They're writing songs, they're choreographing, they're writing books, whatever they're doing, they're podcasting. They don't need to waste time worrying about, am I okay and safe? They just want to be able to do what they want to do.
I'm going to get a creator who's going to listen to this podcast and going to be like sitting there right now, so overwhelmed with thoughts, but I mean, that's what, reach out to Elissa, contact her via our website, because that's why you are there.
Yeah. Always happy to talk to people. Yeah.
Yeah. So just on that, before I move on here. So on average, so let's just say I'm an independent creator, I go onto your website after listening to the show, I reach out to you via the contact form. Like, what is the process, that's followed after that? You charge a consultation fee. On average, how much is the consultation fee? What's your process there?
Okay, I do not charge a consultation fee ever. It's more like, let's get to know each other. Let's hear what your issues are. Let's hear what your wants and desires are. Let's see if we have a good chemistry. That's the first thing. So I don't charge for that. And that's usually about a half an hour consultation. From there, we figure out, what do you need? What do you want? Are you looking for an agreement? Are you looking for a long-term strategy? That kind of thing. And then I have a retainer. So, which depends on if I have like a young or a new creative or a startup business, and all of the money that they have is going back into what they're doing. I'll ask them a question they've never been asked before, which is, what's your legal budget? And then they figure it out. And then we say, I work within their legal budget so that they can build the business, so that they eventually grow into my hourly rate. And like we were talking about before, it's a relationship. It's not like in and out in a transaction. It's not just like that. It's like, how can we continue working together? For clients who are a little bit more established, I have an hourly rate. I have a retainer that prepays your first 2 hours. And then at the end of a month, when I do legal work, I just do my billing. So it's not like we were talking about earlier with the litigators, where you have to put down $20,000, $50,000 at a time. I'm on a much smaller basis because, again, I'm a solopreneur. So I don't have a large law firm that you have to pay for overhead. You're probably an individual creative or a small business, and you can't afford a big legal fee. So there's no reason to pay one. You pay for the hourly work as it's done. So we have those conversations, and I really try to see what my clients need. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for once again being such an awesome human.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Well, it's different. You talk to folks at like bigger law firms, and it's a very different, and they're also awesome. But it's a very different feeling. And when you're dealing with like big businesses and corporations, you're not dealing with the individual person and the family and the hopes and dreams. It's more like a bigger corporate body, and it's a line item. When I deal with creators or small businesses or entrepreneurs, it's personal. It's business, but it's also personal. And it's a very different feel, and I'm talking to people all day too. I'm not just in a back room reviewing documents. It's a constant conversation. So, lawyers are people too. I do like it.
No, you are, this is not only a show that's a blessing for all the listeners, but also for me because, you know, as I interact, with individuals on the show, not all, there's some that I dot down to be like, okay, this is who I am going to refer you to, now
Mhm,
going forward. It's like, for example, one client, she needed a vocal coach. I'm like, okay, look,
mhm,
I've interacted with this lovely lady. She's from the US. Don't be
mhm.
scared because she's from another country or you have to pay in dollars,
Yep.
as your relationship, progresses. But because I've, attended a few of her online, seminars and
Mhm.
workshops, she knows what she's doing. I am
Yep.
not a vocal coach.
Right.
Okay. But I'm going to refer you to a vocal coach. And
Mhm,
now I refer to Laura, who's in the US. Check
mhm.
out our website, sign up to a newsletter, listen to a podcast. And if you want to take the relationship further by having a one on one consultation with her and her team, or signing up for one of the courses, then the decision is completely up to you.
That's between you two.
Whereas
Yeah.
now, at least I've got Elisa now. So now if I find myself in a situation where I'm dealing with a creator who's asking
Yep.
me ABC and it's out of my scope, I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
Here's Elisa. Here's the website. Go in, put your information there. If you're feeling shy, I can do it for you, you
It's
know.
okay. Well, this is what we
And
do as
yeah,
entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. We act as each other's referral networks, referral sources. Like I have a feeling from you that you would handle my clients the same way I do. So I'm comfortable saying you need to talk to Kino. Like this is something
yeah,
I can't
yeah,
do, but I'm happy to send to you. It's definitely a great way to do business and just to remind your clients that you're there for the whole thing, not just the individual. Like if you can't help,
yes,
you've got a guy, you've got a woman, you've got somebody who can help.
yes.
Yeah,
No,
that's
hundred
really
percent.
important.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that. I agree with that 100%. So, like, on to your, because I mean, you are a creator yourself. You also do or have done, still doing your own publications. You've written 4 books to my knowledge. Maybe there's more. Are we still at 4?
I've edited a lot of books. I've written a lot of other things, but I've edited a lot of books and journals. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what are those about? Your books, your journals,
Uh,
your publications, what you focus
they're
on.
about entertainment, art, and sports law for the most part, and also how to help artists. There's one book to which I contributed a couple of chapters, put out by the New York Foundation for the Arts, which is a phenomenal organization in Brooklyn, in New York, that really is a great resource for artists. And it's called, believe it or not, The Profitable Artist. And it's, these are the kinds of publications to which I really like to contribute, and I make no money from them, but to get out the information to folks in the entertainment and art fields about best practices, what you should look at, clauses in contracts, how to do a negotiation. I do a lot of training in negotiations because people are not very comfortable. It's like muscle memory. You have to practice in order to do it. So it's that kind of stuff.
Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. And of course, now I've gone to your website, I've clicked on it, and of course, there's links to take you to all this relevant information.
Yeah.
So that's
Everything's
correct.
up there. I have a great web designer. He's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely awesome. It's an awesome website.
Which is also a
As I
creative,
say,
it's a creative industry. The graphic designers, the web designers, it's really creative.
but it's human. It
Yeah.
has that human element to it.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
that intimate
Yeah.
touch the moment you go on, like, you don't have to necessarily to have already spoken to the person, like we are
Mhm.
interacting right now, but you go onto a website and it just looks like, wow,
Oh, that's very
this,
sweet.
I
I will
feel
make sure to tell
comfortable.
him. And thank you. We
Yeah,
worked hard on it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and the information, like at times you go onto an attorney's website and it's so complex and they're using all this, fancy jargon and you're so
Yeah.
confused about it. Next
No,
thing you
plain
know,
English.
Kino, please
Well,
explain to me what they mean here, 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 here,
yeah.
because I don't understand this.
I want
Where
to
yours is like, as you said, build that relationship,
Yeah,
you know.
thank you. And I want to tell you, I specifically wanted my website to look, and I really appreciate you said that, human and approachable, because all attorney websites are usually cold and impersonal. And I did the same thing for my business cards. I wanted to make them very colorful and different, so that you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
know looking at it that it was a lawyer, but it was someone who
yeah,
appreciated color and appreciated different, geometric patterns and things like that. So, because they all look like white or off-white cards, or,
yeah.
they take you to a kind of boring website, and I don't want to be boring.
Yeah, and it's definitely not boring.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've gone on to like, these websites, and but it's psychological, right?
Mhm.
Because we want to get people scared. You go onto the website and the
Oh,
first thing
yeah.
you see is the judges, whatever you call
Yep.
it, the hammer. Let's call it the
Yep.
hammer. The hammer.
Yep.
You see the hammer like, oh no, oh no. Okay, okay, I need to hire this guy. I don't want to be in front of a judge. I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen for me. It's fear, but you don't have to have that fear any longer.
No, not at all. You
No.
want to be creative. You want to build. That's the opposite. I like to help build rather than break down, kind of thing.
And not get completely ripped off.
Yeah. Well, of
You
course not.
know?
Not get ripped off at all, completely or
Yeah.
partially. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was an article. Yeah, it was an article, but I can't remember which article it was, where someone, like, it's in the millions, that someone
Wow.
invested in an attorney and the case just went on and on and on, making him run in circles, 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 and still no positive result, you know.
I mean, that
It's
happens
sad.
sometimes. It depends on the facts of the case, but an attorney at some point should be like, it's not going anywhere, or what are your other options? Sometimes it's the client. I mean, it should always be the client's decision if you brought the case, whether you're going to continue it. If you're defending a case, you don't have a choice. You have to go through it until a decision. So it really depends on the nature of what the issue is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And do you
But
work
that
on
doesn't happen with
retainers?
me. Yeah, that's very different. That's litigation is its own beast. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And retainers, do you have clients that work on retainers with you?
I do. I mean, I ask for a retainer just to prepare your first 2 hours, and then I don't ask for retainers again unless that's something a client would prefer. Sometimes I have clients who are like, can we just give you this amount and that'll cover the next however many months and we'll be fine and we don't have to worry about paying you additionally at that point. So always open to flexible options. Yeah.
Perfect. So, reaching out to this podcast, which is dedicated to independent creatives, at first, when the podcast first started, it was only for the music space. But then I
Mhm.
also started to find myself getting involved now in the writing space as well with
Mhm.
authors. For you coming on to this podcast, like, what is your message? What do you want people to take away from this about you, about Elissa, about your firm? What message, do you want to give out to the audience?
That's a great question. Thank you. Call a lawyer. It's not scary. First of all, if you have any questions before you sign any contract, before you send out your term sheet, but it's not a contract. It's always good to have that. Another thing is no is a complete sentence, and it's okay to just say no to something. If an opportunity comes in and it seems too good to be true, or you're uncomfortable, there will be other opportunities, and you don't have to take the first one if it's not right for you. That's always a big one, because a lot of creators are gig to gig workers. And if they don't take one, they're afraid they're not going to have another one. And there's always another one. And know your worth and have faith in your creations. And if you build the right team around you, there's no limit to your success. That would be my best advice. And you also may not get everything you think you want, but you ultimately can get what you need and what you do want. And those wants and needs change over time.
Thank
So,
you. No, thank you for that. I love that, you reach out to podcasters to come on to the show, but you're so humble, as in, like, I am here to help you, and I want to
oh
share
yeah, definitely.
information and
Yep.
dope, knowledge with you with no charge at all. The fact that you don't charge for a consultation, is already like a big wow. You know,
Well, for
so
creators and small businesses, that can be a real barrier. And I'd rather
yeah,
people have the legal advice they need or talk to me and be like, I'm good. I don't need anything. But at least have that confidence that speaking to an attorney is not something that only happens after you receive that letter saying, you got to stop using this name. Like, to know what you need beforehand is really important. Like, no barrier,
yeah,
that kind of
no,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. I mean, because I mean, this is it. I mean, this is the question that I always get asked. Okay, I want to consult, further, or I need to go to
Mhm.
court. Advise me until the door. But
Mhm.
some cases, maybe I do need, someone to. Okay, yeah, but you don't actually deal with the litigation. But what I'm
No, but
trying
I
to
have
get
a
to here is
lot of
that
good
if you, if
litigators.
you
I
in the
refer to a lot of good litigators
litigated
who I really trust.
yes, I
Yeah.
get you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the point I was attempting to make was that if you're an independent creator sitting at home right now or driving your car, listening to the show, and you don't have the funds available to, just do a consult,
Mhm.
here's now a great option
Yep.
available for you. A great
Yep.
option available for you. So thank you for that. I
Thank
really, really
you.
appreciate it. For myself also, being in the industry and also doing my best to help people as far as I can,
Mhm.
to also,
Yeah.
get them going correctly, structure their business correctly, from doing the correct registrations to making sure your
Mhm.
contracts are in place to making sure the studio process goes well. This is a huge benefit for my agency as well to okay, there's Elissa, now there's someone I can recommend you to
Yeah.
be with you in the consultation itself, to ensure that this is sorted. Yeah, correct.
That's so
That's
kind. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. So, with all the components of law, that you actually work in, do you love them all, or is there one specific one where you feel like, this is so daunting to do? Here it is again.
No, you know what? I've been doing this for a long time and I've been able, and as my own boss, I've been able to really just do the work that I love. And also something I had mentioned, about a third of what I do is pro bono. So I'm representing nonprofits or creators who just can't afford a lawyer. And I do a lot of pro bono clinics and stuff. And that also helps feed my soul. So on the days where I have to
Oh,
draft something, I'm like, it's nobody likes to work all the time, but I also have these things and I know I'm really making a difference in their lives and I'm really making a difference in their
wow.
careers or like the world or things that are going on. And that's a big part of my reward to myself in the business. So
Yeah, yeah,
I don't have to do a lot of what I do, but I really do love what I do. So I feel very lucky every day to be able to do it. And since COVID, I mean, I had a home office for 21 years. Since COVID, the rest of the world opened up too. So it's become so much more interesting because I'm meeting someone like you who I never would have met otherwise.
yeah, yeah.
We're across the world from each other, but it's so great that we can have this
Yeah,
conversation and this connection.
yeah, yeah. Which has been
Yeah.
awesome. Which has been awesome. Wow. I want to be honest with you. It wasn't where I thought the show was going to go, but you have just shocked me, and I just want to, like, clap my
Oh,
hands
thank
for
you.
all the work that you do, nonprofit
Thank you.
work that you do. Thank you. You know, we need more great humans out there in the world to do this because this is how we all just grow and live our best life, where we feel fulfilled, we happy. We can wake up in the morning smiling, knowing, as you said, that I got a good team that's,
Yeah.
looking after me. They're putting my best interest at heart first.
Mhm.
They're building this with me. They're not
Yeah.
just in it, for the money,
Right.
So thank you so much for what you're doing, honestly speaking. Thank you.
Oh,
And
thank
keep
you.
doing it. So what does the
Oh, I'm
future
not
hold for
stopping.
you?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess,
And
we met each other there with that question. I was about to
yeah.
say, what does the future hold for you? You were like, you answered it before I could even finish. Like, I'm not stopping.
Keep on
I'm
keeping
just
on.
getting
That's it.
started
Yeah,
there.
I'm really lucky and I just as long as I can keep doing, I mean, I don't do a physical job, so as long as my brain is okay, I can keep doing this forever, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I am hoping that, in the future to come, I can, like, just grow your brand as well locally.
Ah,
as the go-to person in the independent
mhm,
creator space, to consult with, to have a chat with creators, about where they're at the moment, or what sort of, dispute they're facing, and, whatever you can share to help them, it's going to be great. Don't be surprised that I'm the one that fills out the contact form. Elissa, do you mind
I
having,
would be thrilled to talk to you again.
this is where I'm at the moment. Something that slipped my mind at the start when you were mentioning AI that I just want to mention really
Yeah.
quickly. With the client, I'm talking about now, who I
Mhm.
met with on Friday, when I was conducting the research to actually give them the correct contracts to get going with, AI was actually one of them, because now they have to secure themselves that when they in studio, with the engineers, with the
Mhm.
composers, with the producers, that they are secured that that team doesn't take their vocals and uses it on an AI platform.
Yep. That's
They
something
have to
that
make
should
sure
go
they secure
in
that
the
one.
contracts. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
that it can't be used. But I mean, of course, now there's two different types of contract when it comes to the vocals, because there has to be this, safety net saying that, okay, that I have ownership of, the stems
Mhm.
itself that we're going to be using in
Yep.
studio. But now there's the AI contract as well, which is completely separate. That you're not going to use it for any AI use on any platform. They're
Well,
not
yeah, I
going to
mean,
upload it,
you
and
can
then
have that as
you
part
get
of
money
these
that I don't
contracts.
even.
Yeah, you can have that as part of the contracts. You don't necessarily have a whole separate one, as long as you have the language
Okay,
that
okay.
protects that you're not going to use it as part of the basis of a language learning model, an LLM. I think I got the words backwards, but a large language. I'm having a brain moment. But the generative model, that you will not be using this. Like if you're talking in the studio, you will
Yeah.
not be using this to help inform on that. And at the same time, on the other side, if I was drafting not for your client, but for one of the other parties, that your clients or whoever's writing the song is not using AI to write the song. So that's very important too, to have it on both sides to make sure. Same in book
Thank
contracts.
you.
We're doing
Thank
that in book contracts too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Sure.
Yeah.
You have just given so much, relevant, critical information on the show within 1 hour. That's just so, so important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. I'm so glad when I was going down, my latest list from podcast guests, like you were the first one chosen from the list, off the latest
Oh,
list that I received. And I guess it's just like
this is the
instinct,
best day I've had all
Yeah,
week. Thank you.
yeah. The universe is just magical. What can we say? So, besides your website, where else can listeners find you online? Are you on social media?
I'm
Any
on
other
LinkedIn.
platform?
So I don't have a large social media presence because there's a lot of rigmarole around attorney advertising, and I'd rather have my clients shine than me shine. So you can find me on my website. You can find me on LinkedIn. I post fairly frequently on LinkedIn. And I follow everyone. So I'm able to see what everybody's doing, but I don't have that much content of my own.